The Life Sciences DNA podcast is sponsored by Agilesium Labs, a collaborative space where Agilesium works with its clients to co-develop and incubate POCs, products, and solutions. To learn how Agilesium Labs can use the power of its generative AI for life sciences analytics, visit them at labs.agilesium.com. Sri, we've got Sunil Talathi on the show today. Who is Sunil?
Danny, Sunil is a senior director and head of data insights, data sciences, and analytics for BeOne Medicines, recently rebranded from Beijing. Sunil is a visionary leader. He's an AI strategist, technology expert, and an innovator with extensive experience in data science, analytics, clinical systems, operations, risk-based monitoring, and clinical data management across several life sciences companies. Really excited to have him on the show.
And what are you hoping to discuss with Sunil today?
I think Sunil is a practical and pragmatic problem solver. He's driven automation use cases which can be taken into the enterprises and go from POCs to scale. So I really want to hear his journey on those use cases and what he faced and how he addressed them and what was the success metrics in delivering them.
Well, before we begin, I want to remind our audience they can stay up on the latest episodes of Life Sciences DNA by hitting the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to hit the like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments section. With that, let's welcome Sunil to the show.
Hey, Sunil, so good to have you on the show. Really excited to talk about some good AI use cases. Sunil, why don't we jump right in? Share with us what your journey was with AI and with some very good examples.
Sounds good, Shivat. Again, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I've been following you on the podcast. I'm very excited to be part of one right now. I'll start with, a journey before generative AI. I think it's important to know the challenges that we had before generative AI. Back in 2016, we were working on protocol authoring, right? And protocol amendment was one of the biggest pain points we had. One of the goals for us was how can you minimize protocol amendment? And those days, we're talking about natural language processing, NLP. And those days, I know NLP, it was the early days of NLP for us, trying to mine different protocol across studies, different protocol templates. We were there, but we're not successful enough to say, hey, have you got some insights on that, right? From doing all 100, 200 protocols, right? In those days, we were also trying to build an AI chatbot. This is before generative AI. And imagine, and I know the nightmare that we had to go through to build the chatbot because when you keep the chatbot much more open the way we have for GPTs today, right? You ask any question, you get the answer. But before generative AI, you have to train your model. You have to train your data. And with the NLP, with the variation of question that's coming your way. So when we kept it open, we realized our failure rate was way too high. So we quickly pivoted that, hey, let's not keep it open-ended. Let's predefine your prompts, right? So we kind of reduce our failure rate. But again, we, including us, not many were quite successful in building chatbots, which looked very futuristic that point of a time, again, before generative AI. Those were the days we lived in where it took a lot to build a chatbot that we talk about today every now and then. It was like a nightmare to build a chatbot that could make it efficient, right? But today, the two cases that I want to focus on is much more mature cases. One of the cases we're talking about the safety use cases, which I'm much more involved in. One of the first AI use case for us. And we chose to go safety, which not many people will go that way, right? Patient safety, people stay away from that. Oh, we don't trust AI. I don't know how to react to that. But we chose for some reason that, right? Because it all depends on how leadership it looks up to that use case, right? We started with a journey where the problem statement was, patient narrative, right? And patient narrative could be a page long or a 2-page long, right? When you read that, you get lost into that, right? And somewhere on you have to diagnose what the events were, when, what was the start date, what was the end date, what was the patient going through. I was wondering, oh my God, I'm glad I'm not the reviewer of that because it's taken days
Sure.
for me to review. Imagine if you're working on a phase 3 trial, you could have 50,000 cases, right? Or 20,000 cases. And imagine reviewing that on end of the study. It's going to be nightmare. This is where we said, hey, let's look. At that point, we already knew that generative AI was good on summarizing data. So we started the journey let's summarize patient narrative quickly. We were surprised. It did a good job of summarizing. We were able to summarize data, provide key insight, structure that into format that much more user friendly, right? But very quickly we realized, oh my God, let's see if AI can interpret data better, and safety interpretation you're talking about. So we went on, let's see if AI can tell me, just looking at the interpretation, right? Looking at the narrative, tell me, yeah, what your feeling is about the AE grading. And we were like, let me see what it does. And we were not expecting AI to be anywhere close to what we were thinking about, right? We were just testing on. To our surprise, AI actually challenged a lot of, it's going to be controversial when I say that, but it challenged a lot of our PI assessment, right? When people says it's a grade 2, AI said it's a grade 4. And we were like, why would AI say grade 4 when PI really says grade 2? And it had a rationale behind that, the chain of thoughts, what led to that grade 4 grading, right? So it looked at the narrative and said, hey, there are some labs, your ALT and XT, they are way too elevated. If you have a labs that elevated, there is no way a patient could be grade 2. It has to be grade 4. And we were really surprised and bogged down with the analysis that was provided. And that slowly started building us trust on AI. And guess what? Today, the journeys, we are using AI not for summarization, but for interpretation.
Interpretation.
We're talking
Hey,
about
Sunil, let's peel that use case because you told us the final scene, which is AI is working very well and it's giving you that interpretation. You talked a little bit about chain of thought. You talked about some reliability and transparency of its output. But that's a journey because as you started that, there were skeptics. The PIs would not trust the AI. There was hallucination issues in that. So walk me through how did you go step by step to this final stage? Because the final stage is amazing, right? You're doing safety interpretation, it's reviewing it. It's as good a peer as what a PI is, if not sometimes better, but it's a good sounding board. It's a true co-pilot, but it didn't become a co-pilot. So walk me through when it was a trainee. How did you make it from a trainee to a real co-pilot? That must have been quite the journey of how did you, what are the coursework you had to do to make the trainee a co-pilot? So let's walk through that journey.
There's a lot of nervous energy, right? We are using AI on safety cases and not a lot of trust. Even today, a lot of people don't trust, right? Uh, but the way we started up is, let's put this as the parallel solution, right? On what you are doing, and let's use this system or an application as a referential tool, right? And then see what AI says and see what our safety science team says. And when we did the comparison, that's where the trust within the safety science team came in, right? So we actually did not release the tool in production. We said this is going to be in a qualified environment for you to utilize as a referential tool. We got the endorsement, not use it for production, but just as a referential. The moment our safety science team, which is a big team right now, started using this for few studies, very quickly the confidence came in. And there were two purposes. One is to get them confident from a business user perspective. Secondly, from a development perspective, I was getting confident that because we can do all the testing that we need to do to get the confidence, but unless you have a real production verification, you never feel confident to release your application, right? So for me, that kind of sealed the deal that, hey, our user got confident with the AI analysis, and I was confident that our model was working to the expectation, right? That kind of checked the box to take it to the production stage.
So tell me, Sunil, were you using a few short example with ChatGPT, or you were building your own SLM model? In the McKinsey maker, shaper, taker, whether you were in that continuum, and then also talk about how did you be able to land it in that review workflow? Because at the end of the day, people don't go want to go into 10 systems and stuff. So walk me through that. What is this the recipe for this? What are the core ingredients? And then also tell me how those ingredients were put together as a finished product, which was in line with the workflow of what the safety reviewers were doing.
When we started up, again, we didn't expect a lot from AI, right? Because we didn't know the power at that point of the time. We knew it does good summarization, but we didn't expect AI to tell me the grading, the CPCA grading, which is very domain specific. So we kind of use RAG at a very early stage, right? Providing the knowledge base of RAG. Hey, this is our CPCA grading. This is what you want. You leverage its RAG and make the analysis whether the grading is from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, right? But as the models became little more evolving, they became much more powerful. And again, I will tell you, just talking about the GPT, the foundation model, even a year back, was strong enough to do the analysis. Today, it's on a different scale, right? We're talking about small models, nano models today. But I'm talking about 3.5 words, and when we were utilizing that point, we have now replaced that. But 3.5 was actually good enough to do the interpretation. So we didn't have to we're thinking about maybe we have to do a fine tuning of the model, use much more RAG application, use much more knowledge base. But we, from a production prototype, we actually removed all the knowledge base because hey, it's not required because GPT by itself is making a very accurate assessment, and our accuracy level was around 80 to 90%. 80% were basically
And are you saying you removed RAG completely and that you just went with a prompt and a few short examples and chain of thought to go directly to these GPT models to get it out? That's amazing, right? That means the classic 3.5 model was I'll build a RAG with my knowledge, use the vector to get to the zone of influence, and then go to the GPT, get the answer, and then formulate it into a good response for the user. Now, what you're saying is you're cutting off all of that because the inherent model itself is now possessing that gradation knowledge, which is as accurate as what you would have trained it from all the body of your data.
correct.
That's amazing.
When again, we were surprised, right? Because we're thinking about, hey, this is foundational model. It will do a foundational stuff, nothing medical stuff, right? We thought you may have to go to the med labs and of the world to go and use that interpretation, right? But the real, yeah, foundation model was strong enough. So we dropped all the knowledge base, which made it efficient for us to maintain a few short examples. And again, uh, uh, truly prompt engineering, right? Providing few short examples really helped us to get what we really wanted to accomplish, right? And yeah, so sorry. So that was basically how it started, how it ended up.
Yeah. So walk me through that journey, right? I mean, where you're landing is a very good place, right? So as you say, hey, the market is that these large language models actually have capability to interpret some core domain terms in medicine. But with that said, the the efficiencies of the prompt is what is going to lead you to the efficiencies of the results. So, did you go outsourcing for prompts? How did you train your team on prompts? Is there a playbook you can share, which we could all use on, how you should be giving those few short guideline examples? Walk me through that prompt because that's a new skill everybody has to learn. So, how did you go about building that skill?
Yeah, but I think it was self-learning, honestly, Stevenson. Again, we normally do a build and buy approach to see where can we build and where can we buy. And mostly we end up being a build org, specifically on the requirements. So it became a build, and again, ideation, from ideation to prototype to production, right? So imagine this was something that, hey, let's try. And again, all we needed is an advanced Python programmer. Let me start over there. If you're a Python programmer, you can easily call the API. And then from there on, learning frameworks of prompt engineering, right? Whether it's the RISE framework. Now there is a lot of framework, right? Where you're looking at response, you're looking at interpretation, you're looking at context, you're looking at examples also. The moment you write your prompt engineering following a certain framework, you have better results. I think we were very clear. So it didn't take a lot for my data scientist to pick up who was already a Python advanced programmer and asking them to call the foundational models, so use the RISE framework and implement that, right? So it didn't take a lot. Of course, there's a lot of pivoting around to get the accuracy level. But from a upscaling from a resource perspective, if you have Python foundation, I found it was a little more easier than people who are not from Python background.
No, that's a wonderful way because everybody is trying to build these type of prompt capabilities, and as you have democratized that, I love it. What you said. Hey, let's pick a framework. There's so many different frameworks available. So you pick the RISE framework. Tell a little bit about what the RISE framework does, so that people know what is the components of it, and what happens in a few short examples for doing that stuff.
RISE actually splits up on what is the context that you can provide. What is the example? E stands for example, C stands for context. I have to see what the R stands for, but the framework actually said how to write your prompts in a more systematic fashion, right? Where we say context is given, your examples are given. So when you follow the framework, how to write the prompts, then you're doing a better job, right? Rather than just writing the prompt without any context, without any interpretation, without any examples, you're never going to go anywhere with that, right? And we
Correct.
start with that. We start without rice and we start with rice, and we saw the difference between it actually.
No, and you're saying a very important example, which I want to just highlight, right? Hey, pick up framework. It doesn't matter which one. Keep it consistent. Build a library of these things, and then as the outputs come, keep refining it. That is one section which you said. The second is to improve the efficiencies of these things is how many few short examples you're giving them, right? How many, and the more you can give, the better it is for it to learn and discern and do that. And the third you said is that, hey, you could do all of this, but don't do prompt in the chat window with GPT and others. Create an API framework so that then it becomes a part of the workflow rather than just you're using chat GPT and then control C, control V into another place. That doesn't scale. As you build an API infrastructure, the API is being called by the workflow to say, tell me what the interpretation is, and the output of the interpretation goes into the workflow. Is that a fair way to say what you built?
Yeah.
In your,
One of the secret sauce also for us is we didn't go and write Python scripting straightly, right? Or write a script, call the API, and create the RICE framework, right? Or follow the RICE. What we normally do is we actually play with GPT straight away, Chat GPT. We actually test our prompts over there, right? With the RICE framework. Before we even write Python script, we actually write a whole prompt in Chat GPT and see the assessment of that prompt. Only when we have fair confidence the response is coming much more friendly, that's where we go and now write the Python script to call the API, right? So this is basically the foundational thing that we built up. Hey, let's not go and write the Python scripting because that's a rework by itself, right? Rewriting it, but you are better off using an interface to adjust your prompts, to interpret your prompts much better, to see where you feel now it's fair enough to get the good results. Now let me use a Python script to call the API. Actually,
yeah. So Sunil, let me. One of the topics everybody has in mind is as you start to write prompts in ChatGPT and put it into API, cost is an issue. Token cost, I know, are coming down by 80%, but still, there's the input context windows, the output windows. So walk me through, one is the quality of output, right? But is the cost of ownership, is that a key consideration? How did you go about measuring and metricing how much it costs? How are you doing from a cost standpoint? Walk me through that journey. Is that a big deal? Did you do an evaluation of that? What are the different cost components in driving this?
we did that, because there was a perception that it's going to be expensive to use LLMs, to use LLM to the extent that we're talking about, right? And specifically, we're talking about a patient world. We're talking about 40, 50,000 cases, right? And each case's interpretation will cost us, right? And so the perception that it's going to be expensive to run a model, first of all, and then maintaining it, right? So we quickly went for evaluation, right? How much cost are we spending today to do this work? And we were engaging our external partners, FSP, to do a lot of work also around that. So we said, hey, this is spend that we have, and we say, hey, let's see the cost of evaluating this, cost of maintaining this. We came to that was actually 1/10 of the cost. Uh,
Okay.
so
1/10 of the human labor cost. That's what you're saying. If I paid an FTA X, then the interpretation of a PI work of that is 1/10 of what that cost would be.
correct,
Correct?
correct, correct.
Okay. But inherently, on this 1/10 of the cost, are there certain components of the cost which is higher, like, hey, compute is higher or my token cost? Is that something from a cost perspective you're monitoring it such that you're not having a suddenly a big fat bill show up in your door from Azure or Amazon or Google or whoever you're using?
Yeah, I think this is where we were smart enough to know that how many cases are we going to process annually, right? So we knew the historically from the last 2 years how many cases we process, and we also estimated how many cases we will have. So of course we buffered up, right? So we say, hey, we were expecting 10,000 cases this year. We planned for 15,000 cases and say, hey, would that cost still will be acceptable for the function, right? And that cost was still acceptable, right? So we knew it is not going to be over because hey, we said it's going to be averaging 10K cases. We planned for 15K because it could never be 20K because that's not good for for the company. So we kind of did a buffering. We knew what's the max to expect, and we did the costing based on that. So we knew that we never going to be reaching that state. Actually.
Okay. No, fair enough. So now one is the cost part of it. The other is everybody is very concerned about this PI journey. You said you made them reviewers and all of that, but always, even when you have a champion challenger, where the champion is the PI and the challenger is the AI, how did you do from a change management that now it's a co-pilot? Did you incent the PIs in a different way, or did you land the co-pilot at a workflow, or every savings they did, or did you name the co-pilot to be, little Sunil so that they all feel comfortable using it? What strategies did you do to make this adoption happen? Because change is the biggest challenge in adoption of AI, correct?
Correct. Again, this tool was much more internal tool for safety science team, right? So when they look at the safety cases, and based on whatever the recommendation is, they work with the PI. So it was not, it was exposed to a PI, but it was exposed to the safety science team who looks at the safety cases actually. So for me, I always felt that there's never a bottom up approach; it's top down approach, right? Your leader is already on board that this is going to create a value. So your leadership mindset, it was there. Your leader already felt the promise of seeing the product, seeing the value. And when your VP of the org is using the product and acknowledging the usage, then your team tends to follow you. I feel that's an important for any org, right? If your leader doesn't believe in it, your team is not going to look into it, right? But when your leader believes in it and is applying and utilizing for safety reviews, and imagine he's utilizing it with my R&D head and he's providing response to that, right? So when your leader is utilizing it, and I would, he's one of the most frequent users of the product. We look at the usage, and he's one of that. And then they talk about the habit, right? The good habits then build down, right? So it was initially they did not trust it to start with. It was not easy for them to trust, but that's where when we did the pilot for a few studies, they got the confidence in, and again. Adoption was 90% on day one, and guess what? 1 year down the road, the adoption still revolves around 80 to 90%. So which is still a
Wow.
high
No,
adoption.
no,
Yeah.
it's an unbelievable adoption rate. I think you hit upon it. I think leadership, the tone on the top, really drives what needs to be done. You lead by example, and then people follow. But you also have made it easy and frictionless for them through this API and stuff that they can quickly get that. Almost like it's a cheat sheet, right? They do their review and then they do the cheat sheet and says, okay, I did a 3 and a 4. Then they in their mind have the reasons, and then they debate against the AI and then say, okay, I agree or disagree. But it's that constant collaboration between the two. And then, so the one last part, which I wanted to probe in this case study before we could go to the second one, is how do you give back feedback to the AI? What mechanism did you build? Because everybody talks about reinforced learning. Did those things go into a few short examples again, or each time when AI said 4 and they said 3 and 3 was the right thing, was there an override function and a feedback? How did you fill that human in the loop? Because what you're doing is human in the loop, where the human is now learning from AI, but you're also saying, what's the mechanism for the AI to learn from the human?
Before I get to the question, Shiva, so the previous question, I want to just add two things over there, right? One, I think the moment we talk about AI, right, we tend to create a AI product, right? I feel that mindset is not right. Uh, AI is not a product; it's a capability, right? So one of the things we did is we want to integrate the capabilities in the existing product. I think it's an important thing to mention that they were using the product like whether it's a BI product, so we integrate the capabilities in it. So it was much more easier for them to utilize because they were already using something, right? Now capabilities comes in. Secondly, is about how you build your interface around it, right? So imagine you give them the raw columns and you give the AI interpreted columns. Both are sitting side by side, so they can look at your raw columns, what coming from the raw data, and you see the AI interpretation, right? When they see side by side, they can easily compare. So for me, it's also about how you building your interface around it. So two key points for me was it's not about building a separate AI product. Then for me, it's a different problem. I have two products to go through. But we always had a strategy that integrate AI into the existing product that worked for us. And secondly, is build a UI that's much more. We talk about UI UX, right? Your user experience is always going to be the number one, right? They should never look like, oh, this was AI. They should feel like it's part of the process itself.
No, I mean that UI UX in the new world of AI is so important, and I actually talk a lot about not having two siloed products. And thanks for bringing that up, because people tend to say, "Hey, this was in the AI product, and this is my workflow," and then the human is comparing it. And what you're saying is, as we give it, making it easier from an experience standpoint to compare, contrast, and Now, answer that question on feedback. How did the human give feedback back to the AI?
So when we launched the product, Srivatsan, we didn't have like a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of button where we can automatically say these cases were not right, right? So it was much more real-time feedback with the safety science team. So and we knew it was important product, right? So we engaged with the safety science to provide feedback on a weekly basis, at least for the first few weeks, right? Even after the pilot run, when we live with all 40 odd studies on day one, we actually were working with the safety science team, and we got real-time feedback. Hey, this assessment of AI is not correct, right? And we took the real feedback from real users saying that this is not right. And this is where we had to do again. We did some on the fly bug fix, saying that hey, again, we add a few more examples to make it much more concrete. So your prompting fine tuning was there real time while we are working with the users. But now it's a little more sophisticated. We are getting that feedback, which one is really a right assessment, which one is not. The thumbs up, thumbs out button really helping us right now in that found. But I think the initial days, our safety science really say, hey, this is not giving me right context. This is giving me extra information. This is something that I would not expect. So the way we manage is real-time feedback, real-time examples, or real-time fine-tuning of the prompts really helped us out.
It's funny you said that. Hey, how do you debug a prompt, right? And the debugging a prompt is nothing more than going and giving more examples on it, right? It's
Good.
quite counter to coding where you have to fix the code and then test it and doing it. It's again, you have to test it, of course, but you're then giving more examples. It's almost like if I don't understand what you're saying, then you give me more examples for me to make, better understand it. Sunil, this is a good case to explore. I know for sure you have other cases to talk through. Walk me through another one where the same journey before and after and how you went through that.
There are two other cases, but I'll speak about one right now, which I was recently coming from another conference. Uh, risk-based quality management, RBQM, is a big space, a lot of investment from the industry. One of the key piece in RBQM is critical to quality factors, right? You read the protocol and you say, hey, let me see from the protocol which of these parts are critical to quality, right? And then you have your RBQM lead or clinical operations team looks at the protocol day in day out and say, for my study, these are the 40 critical factors, right? And of course, we have a critical to quality factors. You can imagine that if you have your RBQM lead, no matter how smart, how efficient it is, every RBQM lead will, if you give them two same protocol, they will come with a probably slightly different, CTQ factor because it's much more subjective, right? You look at the library, say, hey, for me, they'll come up with this 10 unique one, the same RBQM lead for the same, sorry, different RBQM lead for the same protocol. They may give it with probably 11 CTQ. So for me, there were two things right now. One is the pain of going to the protocol. Of course, we have to go to that, but identifying CTQ factors, which was in the library. It's a very manual work that the team did. And secondly, inconsistency, right, around it. Uh, we thought, hey, classic case. Let's try it out, right? And it was very easy when you say, hey, we said, let's look at a simple system, right? We asking AI, look at the protocol, read the protocol, much easier than what we used to do in the past, right? Through NLP. And then say, hey, we had a CTQ library. We say user drag approach, knowledge base. We said, AI, look at your CTQ library and look at the protocol and tell me which one of those are relevant for this protocol. And guess what? It did a job not for one study, across all studies very quickly and very easily. Now, so critical to quality factors, which was done manually, reading the protocol by every study, which has RBQM, was very painful in the process, very inconsistent, prone to error as well. This was a classic case where we said, let's do risk identification. And again, this is on a very good case for AI right now. Let's use AI for risk identification. That's where we're using AI right now for.
No, this is a great example because I've worked with several places and including our own where we read the protocol and then really enhance lots of value from the protocol. This seems to be very much in that realm of giving few short examples. You have 40 critical factors or a library of 100. You tell AI that this is the universe of things, and then it can do it, and it can do it much more faster because it doesn't have to think, and it can do it for 40 protocols and 50. And then you can go back and reassess what the protocols person did before. So this is a great use case. Are you now live in this or you're still in the build phase?
The product is ready.
Yeah.
It's not yet live because the product is part of another big product right now. So there is a holding, but I think by end of August, the official production live will happen on. But we have tested this for at least 7 studies right now. We got the initial assessment from the ad became lead on the assessment. So it's a ready product, but waiting because it is part of the bigger product release actually.
So Sunil, let's apply some of the lessons you talked about in the previous use case. So in this journey, it seemed like a very obvious based on what you did for safety narrative. You know that, but were there any twists and turns? Like anything, no movie is the same as the other. Was there a little gotcha which you didn't think would happen, and how did you go about solving for that?
This time we were much more prepared, right? Because from the learning that we took on, so we were much better prepared. We knew what to expect. We were much more clear how to write the prompts also. There was an efficiency right from day one for us, right from the learnings that we have. So the only thing that keeps on coming is, of course, the user trust. How do we address that? Again, we probably use the same framework that we did in the past. But second is always about a lot of our systems are GXP, right? Regulated GXP systems. It takes a lot of rigor to qualify for GXP. So it's always going to be working with compliance and quality. How are you going to use the application, right? Because of course, the GXP rigor needs a whole 9 yards of validation to ensure it's utilized. So it's always about what you feel about the application, how it's going to be utilized, and how compliance feels about it, right? So that journey is always a little sticky point, right? Because and
Let's explore that, Sunil, because that's a very important thing which people can benefit from your way, right? So the previous example is also GXP, but this one is smack on in GXP because you're making a quality assessment, and risk-based quality then defines which sites you'll monitor and who you send for more monitoring. It has a whole bunch of impact around that quality measure, right? The higher the quality measure, then they're sending more people because there's issues. What is the validation strategy for LLM and a prompt? Because you can't go and validate ChatGPT. So tell me, walk me through what is your how do you go about building a use case? How do you prove auditability? How do you prove in the GCP model how the as you said, the auditors and the regulators will be comfortable that you're doing everything by GXP? Walk me through that process.
yeah, but I think it's important for everyone to know that uh, business user or development team don't have the decision around that, right? You can only provide your business case. How do you plan to use AI? Normally, the process is this computer system validation. You capture all the information of the tool, how the tool will be applied, and what the tool is going to provide, and how the tool is going to be utilized. What is the end output of that, and how would you utilize the output of AI for what purpose? Is it going to be regulatory submission? Then that automatically qualifies for GXP. Are you going to make decisions what AI is recommending? Are you going to use that decision for patient safety? Automatically becomes a GXP systems, right? So it depends on what's going in and what's going out, right? So what's going in basically from a patient data perspective, right? What information is passing in over there, and output wise, what is the output? How it's going to be utilized? That is a key driver of driving up GXP, non-GXP. So normally, computer system validation assessment that normally takes care of, hey, based on the information, based on the AI use case, based on I think these are the key what you call a evaluation process that we have to decide. Okay, this is now a GXP low, a GXP medium, a GXP high. When we do GXP, it goes to a whole new rigor. Non-GXP is a lower rigor. Uh, so our computer system validation uh, evaluates whether it should be GXP, non-GXP. And once it's done, GXP or non-GXP, then we say, hey, then we go for an official demo with the entire team of compliance quality. Say, hey, this is our rigor on the quality also. It's not that if it's GXP, we are done. No, of course, there is going to be official validation, but they also want to see what is the dev team doing around it. So our evaluation model, how are we ensuring the accuracy is there around 80-90%? What is the model that we take on, right? So G-value evaluation that we use. There's a lot of inbuilt evaluation that we can do. We can interrogate GPT themselves right now, right? Evaluate your own response. GVAL is a framework that we've been utilizing right now. So CSA, computer system validation, probably evaluate GXP, non-GXP. Once whatever the decision is from the compliance quality, we take it to the next step of see, hey, how do we now see system will be evaluated, what data goes in, and how is the evaluation model by the dev team to ensure that there is 80-90%. And it's not like a 20%, right? Because if it's 20% accuracy,
Yeah.
that looks very differently. But we say, hey, we have an 80% accuracy. This is the reason why we 80%. That helps the
Yeah.
compliance quality team.
So let's peel that on. So because I just came from the DIA and talked to quite a bit of inputs from the FDA, and so what you're defining defines very well with what FDA calls about the context of use. And once you define the context of use, and they say if the context of use is for patient safety or regulatory submissions or patient or endpoint collection, then it is not just GXP. It may have to have a very higher burden of proof and transparency and all of that. But in many of these examples, you always had a human in the middle where, in the previous example, you had the PI actually look at the data and then make decisions. It's the PI who's saying whether it's 3 or 4. Here in the RBQM, you're giving them an estimate on whether it's 11 or 14 or whatever is the score from the CPQ scores. But it's still the person and the RBQM person who's making that score up. Now, given that were both of these things CSV and low, medium, high validated or non-CXP? That's my first question. The second is, if it was a low, medium, high, what kind of documentation did you provide and what kind of test cases do you write? Because people are always wrestling with, how do I write a test case for a prompt? What are the type of things which I should be doing? As you said, 80 to 90%. Tell me a little bit more about the G value and all of that. People are really struggling to understand what should they be doing at all these areas. It would be good to break it down into smaller components and share with the team.
We talk about fine tuning of the prompts. So GVAL is a classic framework, right, where you talk about prompt accuracy. So again, the examples normally we provide. If you look at a classic test case, where you say, hey, this is my expected result, right? And you see what the application is providing. If you look at that framework of test scripts, right, this is when you test out, this is the expected result expecting, right? GVAL is a similar framework, right? You're actually saying that, hey, I need this kind of an expected response from my result, right? And GVAL actually say the scoring of that, and scoring mechanism that provides you how the accuracy level is, right? Around your response, around your prompts. So basically, is the scoring that allows us to know how accurate the prompts and response are there. And again, you're not using your evaluation. It's we asking you GPT, hey, GVAL evaluation, give me this 4 factors. It tells the accuracy around that. The scoring helps you define if it's 80 or 90% around that. Again, we're just saying that giving expected results from the prompts. We say, and when we send this to the prompt, the response compares with our response. If the accuracy is a good match, say it's 80% accurate or 90% accurate. So it's a classic, we take from a traditional testing approach that we use for GVAL as well right now.
Okay, perfect. No, we've explored a lot of really exciting things in this one, even just within these two use cases. So, Sunil, a lot of exciting things. Where's the future? Where are we going? The next 2 years, 3 years? Where is all AI and what you're doing going to lead us or take us forward?
I think number one, I said it's important. We realize the importance of AI. I think AI was always there, right, Srivatsan? But last 2 years after the release of GPT, the team has realized, the leadership has realized the importance of AI. So there is a major reskilling, upskilling effort that's happening on right now. I would say in the next 2 years, your company, your org will be much set up to work on AI, right? Because you have done reskilling, upskilling on a scale that we have never seen before. Normally, you say a technology change happens in a few years' time. You only change a certain team. This is the functional upskilling you're talking about, right? Or reskilling. It's not about building AI systems, it's about using AI systems also. In next 2 years, I would say every company, every org and function, they will be finishing the upskilling, reskilling program, right? Second trend, I would see, the moment you're upskill, reskill, your adoption of AI tools. Today, we have a lot of people, we talk about AI, there's still a lot of people in the function who don't use AI, who don't even use GPT, right? That will change also dramatically, right? The adoption of this AI tools, as simple as co-pilots, whether it's going to be GPT, you see the adoption goes up. With me, the moment the adoption goes up, the simple efficiency really comes in, right? Using GPT itself. Uh, I think a lot of the organization, if you look at last 2, 3 years, we have done a lot of production ready products right now. A lot of people are still in the POC phase, still evaluating generative AI. I feel the next 2 years we're going to answer that question, right? All of them may have a chance to finish the pilot. People will building the enterprise scale level application. I think we are also in that journey right now. We have done point solutions. We have proven it works. We have proven the value it works. Now it's about not point solution. It's a framework solution. It's an enterprise solution that we're going to build on. So next 2 years, I will see that trend is much more not on the point solution, much more on the framework solution, right? I would say the trust will be much better. And the key part is going to be, you speak a lot about AI agents. You speak about a lot, human job, will have job or not. I think the next 2 years is going to be important to see how human and AI will coexist. I think that answer, we should have, there is an ambiguity around that right now, right? hey, what will be my role in 2 years' time? I feel that 2 years' time, that clarity will be there, that how human AI will coexist. So, and again, there are a lot of other use case that we can talk about, but I feel that the programming will be much more efficient. Code creation is a big part of it, but there will be less of content creation, but there will be a lot of content interpretation. I feel that AI will become much more better for decision making. Today, we only look for content creation a lot, but I feel there is a maturity, there is a trust that will build on next 2 years' time, that team will go and use AI for decision making rather than content creation.
No, this is awesome. I mean, I think what you said is spot on. I think we need to go from pilots to scale. We need to really be reskilling. And I loved what you said. It's not about AI or the human. It's how we work together. We now have a new worker in our workforce. We need to make sure that we're adopting that worker and integrating that within our processes. Sunil, this has been a fascinating discussion. Really, thank you for your time. And I really appreciate your deep insight into these two case studies, and I really wish you well. Thank you.
Steven, thank you for having me over here. It was fun.
Well, Sri, what did you think?
Daniel, it was really good because Sunil really broke down complex problems into very simple components. He really taught about this journey of how you can use prompts to really solve big problems. What was interesting is we're in actually version 2 of how this journey is evolving. Initially we would go and take our knowledge and store it into a vector repository and use retrieval augmented generation models to then coexist with large language models. What he said blew my mind off, that all the large language models are very efficient to do safety interpretation. And what he's now doing is teaching it what we call few shot examples, teaching it guideline examples on what you should be doing. And it's doing the job 80-90% as good as a safety interpretation person or an expert. That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
Well, it's interesting because, we've talked a lot about data being critical for the AI to be trained properly, but we haven't talked a lot about prompts, which requires training the user. How should companies think about the role of prompts in getting AI to do what it wants it to do? And what did you think of the approach Sunil described?
What Sunil described was that prompts are like code. You need to first have a framework on how you're writing it. It's not like search where like, hey, let me find out what the weather is. It's like you have to give me a structure. I am in New Jersey and this is the weather and this is what I'm looking for. And so, yeah, the first thing he said is pick a framework. He used the RISE framework. There are several frameworks to use. What that does is it gives us a structured approach to give that guideline to the prompt. That's the first part. The second is, he said that as you build prompts in a clinical space, think about input and output. That's his validation comment. So just saying this is the output of the prompts, he said, pick up how will you evaluate the output of the prompt. So setting up this evaluation, GVAL as he calls it, which is one of the evaluators, there are several other evaluators, tells you what you're getting as an output is as good as what you desire. So I love that you have to think like code, use a framework, make sure you're testing it appropriately, and then constantly refining it and delivering it. So it was a great lesson which he taught us on how you go about building a prompt project.
You also asked about balancing quality and cost. Any surprise in the way he talked about the cost components or how he thinks about that balance?
There were three things which he talked about. The first is the classic ROI. He said, hey, I took people-based effort, then assessed the cost of what the AI teammate is doing, and said it's a tenth of the cost of a people-based effort. Great. That's your classic ROI. But that I think it will start to evolve is as we start to build a lot of these prompts, a lot of guidelines, and the more you have, you need to start optimizing what I call tokens, input tokens, which is what you ask the LLM to respond to, and output tokens, how it responds and how you do that. So I think the cost part of it is going to continue to evolve, but the ROIs were so stark and clear that he didn't have to go into the micro section of all of the different costs and nuances of how you go about building it. But what he said was very interesting. It's not on cost, but how he landed the output of the AI was actually built into the workflow. And the reason I say that that's a very important part of the cost is there's an integration cost to integrate the AI output into the workflow. And once you do that, actually the quality and the output and the adoption benefits increase exponentially. So it's a low cost to integrate, but then a high cost in terms of value and quality.
Well, there was one other thing he said that really rang, which was AI is not a product, it's a capability. What did you think of that?
As we start to bring in this new workforce in the market, the AI teammates, you have to think about them as a teammate and a capability, not as a product which is finished and complete, which means you're learning from the output of that teammate and you're giving learnings back to the teammate. And he said it in a very fascinating way. As we look across the next 2 years, it is how we can coexist in this new ecosystem, new normal. And those who are adaptable to this new teammate are going to be so much significantly more productive than those who are expecting perfection from this teammate.
Well, it was a great discussion. And Sri, thank you as always.
Oh, thank you, Danny. Take care.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Agilisium Labs. Life Sciences DNA is a bi-monthly podcast produced by the Levine Media Group with production support from Fullview Media. Be sure to follow us on your preferred podcast platform. Music for this podcast is provided courtesy of the Jonah Levine Collective. We'd love to hear from you. Pop us a note at danny@levinemediagroup.com. For Life Sciences DNA, I'm Daniel Levine. Thanks for joining us.